Great. I think we have a good group here today, and welcome to the Battle of Cohesity versus Veritas. We're excited to have you here today, so thank you for joining. So let's get started with a few housekeeping items. We welcome any questions you may have along the way, but you will be muted. So please ask any of your questions in the chat box, and we will answer them at the end of our session during Q&A. Also, don't forget that we are giving away a $30 Grubhub gift card for those of you who stay with us until the end of the event. We will be sending your gift card out in the next 24 hours by email. And now, what you all have been waiting for, let's kick off the battle. Let's start with a few introductions. So Bob Mill joins us from Cohesity as the Senior Director of Engineering. Bob was formerly an executive with Veritas, so he has all of the knowledge that we need. He brings extensive experience focused on data management, security, big data, cloud, and analytics. Joining Bob is Comport's very own CTO, Erik Krucker. Erik is responsible for Comport's technology and partnership strategies. His extensive experience in strategic infrastructure, cloud solutions, and implementation are invaluable to our clients. And on that note, I pass the baton over to Erik to get this battle started. Erik?
Good afternoon, Chelsea. Good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Chelsea, we could go to the next slide. I'll start with the agenda today. So we're going to do the battle between Cohesity and Veritas.
Sorry about that.
And sort of what some of the differences around the traditional approaches are versus Cohesity's approach. So we'll start with some quick intros. I think Chelsea's already done some of them. I'll give you a little bit more of an intro about who Comport is and what we can provide just really quickly, and then we'll get right into it around fighting ransomware, how you can manage data globally, the obvious move into the cloud. Everybody's moving more and more of their services and applications out into the cloud. We'll have some questions towards the end, and then we'll conclude. And we're going to send out some gift cards to everybody. So ask some questions. Don't be shy. We'll get to them at the end, and then we'll go from there. So next slide, please, Chelsea. So Comport we've been in business since 1982. Started off selling traditional hardware, and we've morphed our business over the last several years into more of a solutions provider and managed service provider business. So some of the breadth of what we can provide to customers are managed services around infrastructure, disaster recovery as a service, backup as a service. Looks like I got muted. So HPC as a service, SOC services, and all the things around managing, monitoring, implementing Microsoft Azure, VMware, Cloud, AWS, things like that. And one of the unique values that we bring to our customers and to the solution set is that we can provide managed services for both for hybrid infrastructure, regardless of whether it's on-prem, whether it's in our colo or in a public cloud, and we can collectively stitch those things together as a cohesive solution. We can provide a single billing source. We can do things like cost containment for customers who are running into issues around their cloud spend, things like that, compliance and security. Security is one of the biggest things that we can provide to our customers around their application stack for on-prem solutions, the cloud solutions, things that they're doing with IoT, which IoT and things that are going on out in the edge have been pervasive and just growing as a segment for our customers and for all you guys who are implementing networking and all things IoT out on the edge. So, the way that we provide things is we do assessments, we plan with you, we design, and then we implement according to the specifications and what your requirements are. So next slide, please, Chelsea. As far as Comport Secure, oh, there we go. Nope. Yep. As far as Comport Secure, so Comport Secure is our sub brand, it's our managed services brand, and we have data centers that are across the United States. If you want to do a colo solution, or if you want to have a solution that's that's located close to one of the big cloud providers. We have several data centers where we have direct connections, express routes into those cloud solution providers, the public cloud solution providers, or we can provide those services ourselves. So in a geo-dispersed way, whether it's on the West Coast, on the East Coast, somewhere in between, we can provide those fully managed services to you. So just a quick introduction. I'm gonna pass it off to Bob. Let Bob introduce himself, and then we'll go into what we're here for, to talk about Cohesity.
Thanks, Eric. So as I mentioned at the start of the call, I lead the East for Cohesity. I spent quite a number of years at Veritas, and so certainly anxious to have this conversation today. I thought, today we could start off with a little bit of what I called what we're all dealing with, and what I tried to present here is really what we're hearing from a lot of our customers with regards to what's top of mind for them, what they're quote unquote dealing with from an organizational perspective, from an architectural perspective. And Eric, certainly eager to get some of your thoughts on this as well. But from my vantage point, certainly most of our customers that we talk to are certainly continuing on their cloud adoption, whether that's building out private cloud, whether that's leveraging a public cloud provider, or sort of somewhere in between from a hybrid perspective. And with that, and some of it because of it, but also with that, most organizations are seeing this sort of data sprawl. Whether it's before sort of from a legacy perspective, it was edge versus data center. Now it's edge, data center, cloud's where data is, and that's introducing a lot of complexity for a lot of our customers. Complexity because of where the data resides, as well as complexity with the data sets, or with the tool sets rather, that are required to manage that data set. And then certainly you can't pick up a paper and not hear about the security threats. I mean, certainly that's top of mind for a lot of organizations today is the kind of ever-present threat from ransomware and other malware. And that's, on top of that, certainly customers dealing with, budgetary challenges, which is really driving customers towards a lot of automation, a lot of enablement of workload owners. And all of these kind of in totality are really causing organizations, certainly ones that we talk to take a different look in how they do data management. And that includes things like backup, et cetera. So Eric, is this what you see as you talk to customers as well?
Absolutely. I think the biggest things that customers convey to me is data sprawl. Is obviously the amount of data that's being generated, and I mentioned IoT, right? So the IoT devices are generating tremendous amounts of data, and then how do you deal with it? Where do you place that data? How do you put it in a place that is the most cost effective is one of the biggest challenges for customers. And then security is the second. Those two things kind of go hand in hand as far as number one and number two topics. Yeah. With the Colonial Pipeline ransomware, and we've seen this in places like Baltimore, where the municipality itself was hacked into. I think they paid the ransom as well. How did they recover? They were ill-equipped to recover from that type of a threat, or and what do they do? How do they respond to it? Is really what customers are talking about. So if I do get hit, or when I get hit, how do I respond to it? And how do I respond? How do I get back up quickly? Because nobody wants to pay the ransom, right? So,
sure.
Yeah, I think that's what customers are talking. And then after that, there's all the other things come into play, right? The drive towards automation is huge right now because people are trying to make things, try to make it less touch from their admins and their engineers. They want to make it as automated as possible. And then ultimately, how do I contain, my costs regardless of where I put the data?
Perfect. And I think with the let me start from a high level perspective. So, you and I have been talking about some of the complexity and, some of what customers are dealing with. And, I think that as companies try to deal with this complexity, it really speaks to, what we're trying to solve as a company. So, first off, from a complexity perspective, as you look at most organizations, that they have sort of silos of management, right? So there's potentially tools that manage data on-prem, manage data off-prem, potentially multiple solutions in both of those locations. And really from a Cohesity perspective, we set out really to consolidate a lot of those multiple silos into a single platform. And from a Cohesity perspective, it's that software-defined architecture that allows us to kind of integrate backup and filing objects and analytics and DR and all these other functionalities into this single platform, which is really helping customers kind of cut through that sort of complexity mess. And I think as we start to compare Cohesity with Veritas, I think that's the reason why I put this first is I think it's really one of the most glaring differences between what we offer as a platform and what Veritas offers from a solution set. So, if you look at go ahead.
When you go talk to customers, how many different platforms does a typical customer have as far as backup or data protection is concerned? Because I see a lot. Just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, certainly. So, sometimes it's separate solution for virtualized environments, separate solution for NoSQL, different between on-prem and in the cloud. You're right. I mean, it's kind of this hodgepodge of solutions and hodgepodge of management interfaces. And again, it's kind of back to that complexity, high operational costs, all those sorts of things. And my point from a Veritas perspective is it's really no different, right? So it's a net backup plus access plus data insight and VRP, et cetera. And really just sort of adds to this complexity with regards to how people manage their environment and how they provide protection across that. And what you have up here on the screen right now, in addition to this, sort of how do we provide data protection, there's also this idea around how do we get global visibility across everything that we have across our estate, right? So we know, we all know that customers' estates are growing, right? It's not just I have a data center and a DR site. It's certainly a lot more than that. And this ability to have a single UI across their environment, global search across it, global management across it, and then also sort of have this ability to do things kind of back to your comments around ransomware, have the ability to do detection of ransomware across your estate to understand when do you need to take different actions. And from Veritas perspective, again, I mean, this is really an area where they've struggled over time is the ability to provide this sort of unified view across your environment, whether it's unified across all of your net backup domains, whether it's unified across all your net backup appliances. It's that ability to sort of have this single kind of, not to overuse the term single pane of glass, but sort of this single place to go to allow you to visualize and manage your environment. And then next here, from an architectural perspective, I think that's probably one of the fundamental differences between what you see today with Cohesity versus Veritas. And Cohesity, as I mentioned before, is a software-defined platform. It is infinitely scalable, meaning as you grow, you add nodes. It's not sort of gigantic building blocks that you may have in a scale-up configuration like what you have with NetBackup. And what this architecture allows us to do is actually a couple of very unique things. So, one is this idea of sort of rolling upgrades. I mean, I think, Veritas customers have all lived through the upgrade challenges with NetBackup, right? So it's upgrade master server, upgrade media server. If you have an issue during the upgrade of the media server, potentially you have an outage to your backup operations. Here, the ability to have sort of an automated rolling upgrade across all of the nodes in your cluster, no downtime while you do it, and also no forklifts, right? So this idea of as hardware ages, there's no catalog migrations that have to happen. There's no massive forklifts. It's add more nodes, subtract the nodes that you don't need anymore, that are aged out. And this ability to support heterogeneous clusters, meaning that look, maybe you purchase Cohesity initially as a Cohesity white box solution, so hardware from us. But as you grow, as you change, the ability to insert OEM solutions as well, things HP and Cisco and others. But also when you take a look at this sort of scale out and the hyperscale architecture, it also provides you with some very unique backup and recovery functionality. I'll just give you one example Actually, going to go back a slide. So just one example is, look, just about every customer is very virtualized, and VMware is certainly one that most customers have. When you have a scale out architecture, specifically with Cohesity, is this ability to actually have backup time, cut the VMDKs up into small parts and sort of divvy that up across all of the clusters so that every cluster is consuming a small part of data at the same time. What that gives you is dramatic increases in backup performance. And that's certainly what we'll talk about a little bit later is that leads to some of these operational efficiencies and a decrease of backup windows and all those sorts of things. So certainly the architecture has a benefit. And I know you talked a bit about HCI in your intro. Erik, I'm sure you have a couple of comments around sort of the benefits of hyperscale.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that I talk to with customers around infrastructure is flexibility, right? So nobody wants to be sort of tied to any one thing anymore, whether it's, HP or EMC or Dell or Cisco, any of the big vendors for sure, they at least want to have that flexibility, right? So you have to make choices as far as where you want to be architecturally, whether it's, HP or Dell, whoever it is, but that may change over time. So, today it's, vendor A, tomorrow maybe vendor B, and having that flexibility to increase the capacity is huge without having to do anything unnatural, so to speak, try to re-level data that's not really inherently built in to the system, right? For some of these legacy systems. And again, like I said, having the ability to create larger nodes or put in new hardware, it's all definitely for the positive for Cohesity and the software-defined types of solutions, which is one of the reasons why people are moving towards this HCI model for both compute and for data management.
Yeah, I think the ability to kind of pay as you grow, I think certainly is attractive to a lot of organizations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So the other piece, and I talked about it in the beginning, is this march towards cloud, right? And certainly, Erik, I'm sure you have this conversation with probably every customer. Is sort of what's your journey? Where are you on the journey to cloud? Everybody is on some sort of a journey to cloud, and I think as you look at newer solutions like Cohesity, we use the term born in the cloud, right? And the reality is that architected from the ground up to be sort of cloud native, whether that's on-prem, private cloud from a data management perspective, or deployed into the public cloud. And what that really gives us is the ability to have the elasticity, which we've already talked about, the ability to have very rapid deployment. And because we've sort of architected from the beginning to be cloud native, it allows us to just run natively on any of the public cloud offerings, and protect, whether it be IaaS or PaaS or SaaS, with the same solution. Kind of back to what I talked about before around complexity, is kind of cutting through the complexity of, this is my solution I use on-prem, this is my solution I use in the cloud. And we kind of take that one step further. It's the ability to run the solution on-prem, or maybe run the solution in the cloud, but we also offer an as-a-service solution, right? So it's kind of consume Cohesity as you like, as you need, but still kind of back to the previous slide around global management, is manage the estate. Whether that means if I have the need to protect things on-prem, maybe I have an on-prem version, maybe I'm protecting things in the cloud, maybe leveraging the as-a-service, still have this global unified management. Again, cutting through complexity, providing value. So certainly, cloud is, I think, a bigger differentiator as you look at sort of where we are versus where other vendors are, like Veritas, for example, and is certainly functionality that a lot of our customers look to leverage as they move to Cohesity. Anything you want to add from a cloud perspective, Erik?
Yeah, as you said, everybody has a journey, some sort of journey to the cloud. Some people are further along, or in different places. I don't even want to say further along, but in different places in their cloud journey. And one of the areas so some customers are thinking of, I have a big estate out in the cloud, and how do I protect that data? Maybe how do I protect it from a multi-cloud perspective? And we can help there. Right? Or they're just sort of dipping their toe in, and they want to be able to leverage the cloud where it's appropriate and how it's appropriate. Maybe they want to take and keep most of their data protected on-prem, maybe in a secondary site, and maybe keep longer-term archives out in the cloud. So that's something that we can provide, with Cohesity as well. We can provide a repository that's in Comport's cloud or in a public cloud provider. So, there's a lot of flexibility in the solution and where you deploy it, how you deploy it, and what resources you want to leverage.
Yeah, completely agree. So topic here, a rapid ransomware recovery. I would say that the majority of the conversations that we have today with new clients is around ransomware protection, around securing their environment. I think, the Wall Street Journal, was it just last week, had an article that was talking about the increase in ransomware over the past 18 months. And, they mentioned that last year, 2020, there was a 66% increase in ransomware. And, certainly, I read another article that was talking about the projection for 2021 is that every 11 seconds, some organization will be compromised by ransomware, right? So clearly top of mind for organizations. And I think this is really where I think from a Cohesity perspective, we provide a lot of value to organizations, right? So as we look at Cohesity, we kind of cut security into three different pieces of our framework. The first is kind of prepare, second, detect, and then the third is kind of how do you respond, right? So from a prepare perspective, it's, how do you prepare your organization to weather the storm that will come from a ransomware perspective, right? It's, I think everybody says it's not an if, it's a when, right? So from a prepare perspective, it's looking at this, is your data protection solution able to weather that? And from a Cohesity perspective, first off is the product is immutable by design, right? So from the ground up, when we were developing the solution at the start, it was how do we bring a solution to market that was immutable in its core design? I mean, you can't change the data once it's been protected. So certainly, that's a very important part of the product. But the other is, how do I then kind of minimize the blast radius, right? From how do I ensure that I'm only giving rights to the solution for those that need it, or maybe limited rights for certain personnels. And that's really the idea of kind of integrating both multi-factor auth as well as fine-grained role-based administration, as well as native WARM capabilities. And again, these first two bullets are really, again, kind of differentiators between sort of where we are from a Cohesity perspective with where Veritas is. But as you move past, I've kind of set up my environment to be prepared for that wave. How do I detect what we that there may be a malicious activity going on? And that's, again, inside of Cohesity, we have this ability to do anomaly detection. So the idea to say that, look, things are going on inside my environment that might potentially be a ransomware activity, and allow you to get out ahead of it with regards to how do I want to respond, and then when you respond, this idea of kind of response, a couple of different things to think about. So most organizations that we talk to, their thoughts are, it's all around time, right? Downtime is money. How do I recover at speed? And we have a lot of conversations with customers around what we call instant mass recovery, which could be instant recovery of VM and databases and those sorts of things. And the ability to, the phrase I use is kind of put Humpty Dumpty back together again very quickly, because I think a lot of organizations, as they've looked at data protection historically, it's been kind of a recovery from manual loss. I have a server that goes down. It wasn't necessarily always about, how do I recover my entire state? And so we have this instant mass recovery functionality, as well as the ability to do vulnerability scanning of the environment. So think my VMware state is corrupted. I need to put it back down again, but I want to do vulnerability scanning to make sure that if I restore this VM, will it be corrupted again because it has a vulnerability inside of it that would just be exploited again? So this ability to kind of, make sure that when you're putting things back down, you're putting them back quickly, as well as in a secure manner. And just to give you a quick little kind of anecdote around the instant mass recovery, we had an organization that we were working with that their primary concern from a database or from a data protection perspective was this restoring at scale. And they made it part of the requirements for their next generational data protection solution. And so we set up a test environment with them into their lab, and they wanted us to restore 2,200 VMs. That was their kind of benchmark of that scale. So we were able to go from complete loss of VMs, so 2,200 VMs deleted, to up and accessible to their users in 47 minutes. I mean, that's ridiculous performance at scale, right? So back to their users, 47 minutes, back to the data stores in 4 hours. So that's kind of what we mean from an instant recoverability, instant availability of your business. Any thoughts on that, Erik?
Yeah, the largest thought that I have is that a lot of times when I go and I talk to executives in the organization, I stress the fact that this needs to be part of a security strategy, and they don't a lot of times see it as part of a security strategy. And the way that I explain it is that how are you going to respond when something does happen? And so something is going to happen at some point, and it's, as you said, it's not going to be XYZ user accidentally deleted a file, right? Those things that's table stakes. Anybody can do that, right? It's what happens when there's a mass event where that was unforeseen within the environment, and it's probably going to happen if, not when type of thing. How do you respond to that? How do you respond to it quickly? Is key and of utmost importance, because the average payout, I think I read, was around $400,000 for ransomware. And that's just to pay the ransom. So what is the cost to the organization for being down? What's the cost of the organization in loss of reputation and loss of business that's been going on while this has happened? So this needs to really be part of a security discussion and treated as such. So, and all these things, and having an immutable copy that's not connected to your network is extremely important as well. A lot of times people will just keep the data in a secondary site that's connected to the network that then gets also attacked by ransomware.
Yeah, the idea of sort of air gapping your solution is certainly critical. I didn't put that on this slide, but certainly that's one way, right? So the immutability of the data, and then can you use air gapping to create sort of that another layer?
Yeah,
absolutely.
As I said, if you treat it like security, and security is a layered approach, that's just yet another layer of the approach to what you're doing with data security and data management.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so yeah, I think the other interesting part is, I think a lot of organizations today, certainly the ones that we talk to, are looking at ways to get more value out of the data silo that they've created from a backup perspective, right? Let's be honest, right? You're taking data from a production location, production storage arrays, what have you, and you're moving it, you're creating the secondary copy. And a lot of organizations are looking to, how do I get more value? It's not just insurance policy. How do I get something from it? And we for a lot of organizations, what that means is they take the secondary copy that they have and they create this sort of tertiary copy that they run analytics against, to maybe vulnerability scanning, whatever. In a Cohesity, we kind of flip that script. It's really around, how do we bring the compute that you would typically run against that tertiary copy, and how do you bring that into the secondary copy? And we do that through our Cohesity marketplace. And through the marketplace, we allow third parties to run natively on the platform. And this allows us to have security vendors and analytics and compliance vendors, et cetera, to be able to run on the platform, same infrastructure, against that data, to allow customers to really extract a lot more value from that copy of the data that they have, and kind of cut down, kind of back to this complexity thing, cut down on that complexity that you may have in the organization around sprawl of applications and sprawl of copies of data and all those sorts of things. And then if you want to move to the next slide. Nope, too many. There we go. And then, lastly, and I think it's kind of related, is this idea, I called it delight developers, but it's really this idea of, again, getting more value from the copies that you have. And, we see a lot of organizations, I was actually talking to one just yesterday who they've built out this as a service offering internally around databases, and this idea that they want their workload owners to be to go in and self-provision copies of databases and all those sorts of things. And again, I mean, that's another feature functionality of Cohesity. Another gap between Cohesity and Veritas is the ability to go in, whether through the GUI, through API, the ability to cut zero-cost clones, so you could have DBAs, maybe cut copies of databases, the ability to do data masking, so you can minimize data spillage, kind of back to the security pieces. And certainly a lot of organizations kind of back to the automation piece are looking at, how do I integrate kind of this, API from a third party into my data protection? How do I maybe integrate my data protection solution into my log analytics solution? And that's one of the differences from a Cohesity perspective is kind of, native API integration. Everything we do from a product perspective is based on RESTful APIs. We have the ability to do things in GUI, do things for API, stitch together integrations into other solutions. I think from a Comport perspective, you guys have certainly been helping some customers from an automation perspective. I'd imagine this is probably a topic that you cover pretty frequently with your customers.
We do, and we're in this age of automating everything, right? Everybody's trying to automate as much as possible. Cut the friction in the typical day-to-day operations of managing my data and just IT operations in general. A lot of customers are focused in on manual processes. How do I identify them? How do I cut them out of the overall process for provisioning resources, deprovisioning resources? So it helps tremendously when you don't have resources that are not being used anymore. So helping our customers automate as much as possible from end to end in an IT operation perspective.
Yeah, we're short on time. So this here is, look, I know we've kind of sped through the overall value of Cohesity versus Veritas, but I think that really, as I look at Veritas or really any of the legacy solutions, they really exacerbate this idea of kind of fragmentation of your data, right? This idea of multiple silos of your data. They don't necessarily help create operational efficiencies, right? We talked at the beginning about sort of varying products for varying functionalities, varying products for different deployment types. And unfortunately, because of that sort of varying products approach and that complexity around operational perspective, it does create security risk, right? It creates compliance, it creates security risk from a configuration perspective, from a management perspective. And certainly we believe that our single platform approach with kind of this unified management certainly provides a lot of tangible benefits to organizations from a reduction of risk as well as operational cost and cost efficiencies. Anything you want to add, Erik, on top of that?
No, just that, I think just to underscore that all of these pieces are very simple to implement, right? So it's a single platform. There's not add-on pieces that are yet another project to then go and implement for email and archiving and things like that. So it makes it a lot more simple.
Yeah, I would agree.